Have you ever walked away from a woman feeling like something was taken from you, but you couldn't explain what? Not your wallet, not your time, but your power. As if somewhere in the exchange between your smile and her silence, she had measured you, weighed you, and left with something you didn't even realize you gave. And you wonder, how is it that saying nothing made her stronger? And why is it that your every effort to speak, to impress, to please, only made you weaker? This isn't about manipulation. This isn't about trickery. This is about something more ancient, more tragic. The fact that most men never realize that women are not outwitted by words. They are outwitted by presence. And Nietzsche knew this long before you and I were ever born. You see, we were raised in a world that tells men to perform, speak louder, dress sharper, earn more, say the right things. But no one told us the most seductive and terrifying force a man can wield is his stillness, his refusal to react, his ability to endure silence like a king watching peasants scream in the square. Nietzsche didn't believe in appeasing others, especially not those who thrive off your need to be seen, heard, or validated. To him, the man who has mastered himself no longer needs to explain himself, because explanation is a form of apology. And men who apologize for existing will always be ruled by those who don't. Most men believe dominance begins with speech, that he who speaks with confidence wins. But Nietzsche inverted that idea. He saw that true dominance begins when the man has no need to speak, because speech is often the tool of the desperate. The man who must persuade is already beneath the one who merely watches. He said, "The voice of beauty speaks softly, it creeps only into the most awakened souls." Think about that. If beauty doesn't shout, why do you? If power whispers, why are you still raising your voice? Because you think women fall for what you say. But the truth is brutal. She's watching what you tolerate, how quickly you chase, how much control you surrender for the chance to be liked. And all of it is spoken without words. Let me tell you what Nietzsche understood about women that most men still can't swallow. He didn't think women were weak. He thought they were nature's most perfected strategists, fluid, intuitive, and masters of the unspoken. Where man dominates through structure, law, and muscle, woman reigns through energy, impression, and absence. And that is why most men lose, because they try to overpower the ocean with a hammer. And then they wonder why everything they build washes away the moment she goes silent. You want to outsmart a woman? Then you must first outgrow the boy inside you that still wants to be liked. The one who panics when she pulls away. The one who can't stand silence, who texts when she ignores you, who gets angry when she disrespects you, who debates to prove his worth. That boy is food for her. A man, a true Nietzschean man, does not explain, complain, or chase. He simply withdraws. Not as punishment, but as principle. And that withdrawal, that calm, intentional, inexplicable silence, drives her deeper into herself than any speech ever could. Because in that moment, she has no power to decode you. And women fear nothing more than a man they cannot read. And this is where the game turns, not in your words, but in your refusal to play theirs. When you stop responding to her provocations, her silence, her emotional traps, something terrifying happens. To her, not to you. Because a man who does not need to explain himself becomes a mirror she can't manipulate. Most women are used to men who fold at the first sign of emotional withdrawal. They know exactly what buttons to press. And every man who chases, pleads, argues, simply confirms her belief that she holds the power. But the man who sees through it, the one who watches without reaction, who lets the silence burn through the tension without blinking, he becomes unknowable. And in that unknowability, he becomes desirable, not because he tried, but because he didn't. Nietzsche said, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster." That includes fighting for attention, fighting for explanations, fighting for control. Every time you react, you become the very thing you're trying to escape, a man enslaved by external validation. But the Übermensch, Nietzsche's highest ideal, is not a man controlled by the world. He is the one who shapes it. And to shape it, he must first master the urge to be understood, because being understood is the addiction of the weak. You want her to understand your pain, your truth, your worth. You've already lost. She doesn't need to understand you. She needs to feel that you don't care whether she does. That is the essence of male sovereignty. Not cruelty, not coldness, but the terrifying stillness of a man who has nothing to prove. A man who has devoured his own weakness and emerged with nothing left to explain. This man can walk away mid-sentence. He can sit through her silence without anxiety. He can leave her unread, unnoticed, untouched, not to play games, but because he has transcended the need to be seen. This is not manipulation. This is liberation. You see, what makes most men predictable is their craving. The craving to fix, to please, to rescue, to win her back. But Nietzsche taught us that craving is the mask of slavery. And as long as you crave her attention, her apology, her admiration, you are her subject, not her equal. Silence isn't just a tactic. It's the beginning of detachment, and detachment is the highest form of discipline. Imagine the strength it takes to watch her leave and say nothing, to hear the insult and stay unmoved, to witness her testing your limits and not even blink. That kind of silence is not absence. It is presence weaponized, because when you say nothing, you force her to hear everything. Her own insecurities, her own projections, her own fears. You become the void in which she sees herself clearly, and that is the most unsettling thing a woman can experience, because she's used to being the mirror. She's not used to seeing her reflection in yours. Nietzsche didn't write for the domesticated man. He wrote for the dangerous one, the one who does not flinch when left alone, who does not rush to explain his intentions, who does not apologize for making others uncomfortable. And that includes women. You don't outsmart a woman with clever words. You outsmart her by becoming the one man she cannot decode, the one man who does not dance to her rhythm, the one man who is not pulled by the gravity of her moods. The reason silence disturbs her is simple. It denies her the control she's always had. Control over your emotions, control over your time, control over your attention. Every time you bit your tongue to keep her calm, every time you tried to reason with her storm, every time you let your dignity bend just to avoid conflict, you taught her something. You taught her that you are afraid to lose her, that your identity is tied to her reaction, that you will shrink yourself if it means keeping the illusion of peace. And once she knows that, it's not a question of if she'll test you, it's only a matter of how far. But silence, conscious, brutal, principled silence, tells her a truth she never saw coming, that you are not afraid to walk, that you are not moved by chaos, that your peace is not up for negotiation. And when she realizes that, something primal shifts, because for the first time, she meets a man who does not orbit her, a man who carries himself like a world she must earn her place in. And this is where the power begins. You want to outsmart her? Then let her exhaust herself trying to break your stillness. Let her sabotage the conversation. Let her push and provoke and pretend. But you say nothing. You don't reward chaos with explanation. You don't answer disrespect with justification. You let her collapse into the space you've created by refusing to engage. And when the silence becomes too loud for her to bear, when she finally speaks, you still don't speak to explain. You speak to end. One sentence, one truth, one decision. And then you walk. That, Nietzsche would say, is the will to power. Not in controlling others, but in mastering yourself so completely that no one else can. And understand this, women aren't the enemy, but neither are they harmless. They are the great testers of your soul. They will challenge you in ways nothing else can. And most men, God help them, respond by becoming boys, emotional, reactive, hungry. But the man who passes this test is the man who recognizes the game, sees the patterns, and refuses to play on her terms. Nietzsche wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. And that tribe is not just society, it's the relationships that expect you to conform, to bend, to shrink. The modern man is told to be soft, expressive, endlessly communicative, even when he is being torn apart inside. But strength, real masculine strength, is often quiet, not because it is weak, but because it knows that words are often traps, and the more you speak, the more you reveal, the more you react, the more you are owned." So what does this mean for you? It means you must rewire everything you were taught. You must unlearn the compulsion to explain yourself, to fix her feelings, to win her approval. And instead, you must become the mountain. Still, silent, immovable, a presence so calm it terrifies, a gaze so steady it exposes, a soul so anchored it cannot be manipulated. Now watch what happens when you become that mountain. At first she'll resist. She'll test harder. She'll accuse you of arrogance, of coldness, of being emotionally unavailable. But those are not insults. They are confessions. Confessions that her usual weapons no longer work. Confessions that your silence has become the mirror she cannot manipulate. And soon she starts to talk, not to provoke, but to understand. Because the man who doesn't need her attention becomes the only one whose attention she truly craves. And that's not game, that's nature. When you become unshakable, unpredictable, and undemanding, something ancient in her reawakens. It's not fear, it's not admiration, it's instinct. Because deep down a woman knows when she's in the presence of a man who does not chase, does not flinch, does not seek comfort in her approval. A man who chooses her not out of need, but out of complete freedom. And that choice, when it comes from silence, from sovereignty, from self-mastery, is the most seductive force in the world. Not because it begs to be accepted, but because it doesn't care if it is. This is the level Nietzsche wanted men to reach. The Übermensch is not reactive. He is not consumed by desire. He is not at the mercy of a woman's affection. He stands above, not to dominate others, but because he has already conquered himself. And when he chooses to speak, it is not to prove anything. It is to declare a truth. He speaks when silence has completed its purpose, and when he walks away, it is not in anger, it is in authority. But here's the bitter truth. Most men will never reach this level. They will keep reacting, keep chasing, keep talking, because they are addicted to being understood, addicted to the fantasy that if they just say the right thing, she'll see their worth. But the only way she'll ever see your worth is when you stop needing her to. The man who needs nothing commands everything. The man who walks away when most beg to stay becomes unforgettable. Nietzsche believed that most people live asleep, trapped in the morality of the herd, seeking safety in numbers, approval in conformity. But the man who awakens, who begins to see the illusion of emotional entanglement, of desperate explanations, of word games, that man steps out of the herd. And when he does, he no longer plays by the rules of comfort. He plays by the rules of truth. And truth, by its nature, is silent. You want to outsmart any woman without saying a word? Then become the kind of man who no longer needs to win her, who no longer feels a rush of panic when she pulls away, who no longer loses sleep over silence, because he has made peace with his own. And here is the paradox. The moment you stop needing her is the moment she begins needing you. The moment you let go of the outcome is the moment you become the one she cannot stop thinking about. Because in a world full of noise, the man who speaks with silence becomes a mystery she can't solve. But don't mistake mystery for manipulation. This silence we're speaking of is not a mask. It's the final unveiling. It is not a tactic to get what you want. It is the byproduct of becoming what you are. And what are you, really? You are not a performer on the stage of her emotions. You are not a slave to validation, nor a beggar of affection. You are, if you choose to be, a force. And forces don't plead, they don't rush, they don't explain. They simply are. That is what Nietzsche was trying to wake up in you, the buried presence of your will, the divine necessity of becoming a man who does not move to be seen, but moves because he chooses. You want to outsmart her? Then first outgrow her influence. If your silence is filled with anxiety, she will feel it. If your distance is a tactic, she will see through it. But if your silence comes from peace, from clarity, from the unshakable sense that you do not bend for approval, she will feel that too. And it will change the balance of power instantly, because now, for the first time, she is not managing your emotions. She's facing her own. And this is where the true war is fought, not between man and woman, but within yourself. Can you remain still when every part of you wants to react? Can you remain calm when your ego screams for recognition? Can you walk away, not as a move to win her back, but as a decision that affirms your value, with or without her. This is the death of the old self, the self that begged, that needed, that explained. Nietzsche's Übermensch is not an idea. It is a rebirth. A death to the herd, a death to the obedient male who waits for affection to feel alive. Most men believe that if they are good enough, patient enough, understanding enough, they will win her. But Nietzsche knew better. He saw that being good is often the disguise of the weak, that kindness, when rooted in fear, is cowardice, that patience, when used to avoid loss, is just extended slavery. The Übermensch doesn't love to be rewarded. He loves because it is his nature to give, and he walks away when that nature is exploited. No bitterness, no resentment, just the full awareness that he owes nothing, and that is why he owns everything. The loudest men in the room are not powerful. They are terrified, terrified of not being heard, terrified of being forgotten, terrified that without attention they are nothing. But the man who can sit in a room silent, unmoved, disconnected from the need to impress, he is the man every woman notices, and not because he tried, but because he didn't. And now we reach the edge of everything, the final test, because silence is not enough if you still use it to be seen. Power is not real if it's still performative, and dominance is not true if it requires an audience. So I ask you, can you walk through this life without ever needing to prove you're right? Can you love her without needing to be loved back? Can you lose her without losing yourself? That is the final ascent, the one Nietzsche left us without a map for, because it cannot be taught. It must be lived. It is the silent revolution of a man who no longer moves from fear, from lust, from loneliness, or from guilt. It is the man who has burned every part of himself that bowed for attention. The man who no longer carries the hunger to be chosen because he has already chosen himself. And when that man stands before a woman, she does not see a game. She sees a riddle, one that can't be solved, one that haunts her, even in his absence. This is the silence that outsmarts her, not because it manipulates, but because it transforms. It is the silence of the man who has nothing to hide, nothing to chase, nothing to fear. The silence of a man who could speak but chooses not to, a man who could beg but would rather bleed, a man who could react but instead simply watches as the world exposes itself. And it is here, right here, where your greatest strength begins, not in how you speak, but in how you hold the line, in how you let her come and go without moving your center, in how you refuse to be baited, explained, or drawn into performance. You no longer need to be the loudest. You just need to be the last man standing, and the one who stands without words, without threats, without theatrics, is the one who leaves the deepest mark, because he never tried to impress her. He just existed, fully, powerfully, silently. So from this moment forward, make your silence sacred. Let it be the temple where your dignity lives. Let it be the space where your worth breathes freely. And when they try to test you, let them. When they try to pull you into chaos, watch them. When they try to break your calm, smile and vanish. Not to punish, but to remind them, you are no longer the man who explains himself to be loved. You are the man who walks away to be free. Now, if this message has hit something deep in you, something real, something unspoken, then don't let it end here. Like, share, subscribe, and support the work in the link below so this message can reach the millions of men out there still trapped in the illusion that they must be loud to be powerful. We are building a generation of men who no longer bow, who no longer beg, and who no longer apologize for existing. If you are one of them, I'll see you in the next video. Because the weak chase noise, the strong master silence, and the wise choose exactly when to break it.